find the higher purpose, understand that there's a higher purpose to everything, and can you stay on that flip side of the coin while not being ignorant to the fact that the other side exists.
Sure.
But by choice, where do you want to reside? Because you know the benefits and payoff of that.
So what is a program?
What is a program?
It's a script.
Program is a belief.
Yeah.
We're talking about program. So how is our subconscious programmed then?
By
Are you? Am I on?
I'm interviewing you.
Yeah.
or I can explain it, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, most of the programming takes place between the third trimester in utero to age 7 because of the brainwave patterns that we're in that state, and it's a very programmable state. It's a brainwave pattern called theta, so it's kind of like a state of hypnosis. So you are being programmed by observing your environment and the emotion that you feel based on what you're observing.
Well, even in the womb, you just said.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you heard of a theory a lot of people talk about? It's like generational trauma.
Yep.
Or like, experiences or things could be passed down.
Yeah, because
It's
when
all
you
emotional DNA.
it's all emotional DNA, right?
Yep.
So you inherited your physical DNA from your parents. You also inherit emotional DNA. So you're carrying the energy of those thoughts and beliefs. And now it's in your program system and you're operating from that, wondering why, when I think about it, I want to do this, but I run into so many blocks, and all this self-sabotage based off of, a lot of times when you look at it, it is family patterns. Like, my family, and this happens in my family. This runs in my family. In my family, relationships don't work. In my family, we're just destined to be poor,
Right.
because you do inherit that emotional DNA and those thoughts and beliefs. But so much of your program comes from that early stage of your life because we can't read or write yet. So we don't know how to live life. We don't know how to be a functioning member of society and how to do things for ourselves. So we're observing our environment. We're reading our environment from our parents. How do they respond? How do they respond when the subject of money comes up?
And that's
it's stress. Okay, then when you're older and money comes up, it's like, ugh, why do I feel this way about
that was
money?
the program that was written at that time.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if you've ever read that. Robert
Great
Kiyosaki, great individual, but
Yeah,
great book. But if you grew up poor, the probability that you'll be poor is very,
way
very high.
Mm-hmm.
If your parents were wealthy and instilled habits and beliefs, especially beliefs, because everything in this world is based off belief.
Yeah.
And all that a belief is a thought and emotion, thought and felt over and over and over again until it becomes a hardwired neural network in the brain.
Right. A pathway.
Yeah, neural pathway, neural synapses in the brain. And so when you are third trimester in the womb to age 7, that brainwave state of theta isn't a high enough frequency state in the brain to activate your higher cognitive functions.
Right.
Kids learn based off of how you make them feel. Right? Maya Angelou, I'll probably hack up that quote too, but it's not what you say to people, it's how you make them feel, right? Even as adults, right? You largely remember how people make you feel, not what they said to you.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the energetic communication of that emotion that your heart magnetic fields are communicating to each other.
Yeah.
And that largely stores as belief, a
does.
neurological program in the brain, but also in the heart. Heart has a neurological network as well.
I see this like on a microcosm. Well, kind of a microcosm, but on a shorter cycle, I see this in a sales environment, and I'm sure you have too.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I do door to door for my main gig, and I'm just helping out. I'm second in command here. Mal's in charge, so yeah.
In life and in this
and
business.
everything, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, but you go, if you go knock on someone's door and you're trying to sell your product, and they cuss you out and make you feel bad. Mm-hmm. Next time you go back to that area, you're going to remember that specific feeling. Not so much. You might remember the house and the street it was on, maybe even the guy's face or the gal's face. But yeah, you're not going to remember what was said exactly. You just remember the feeling.
And back to your whole generational thing, they've done studies on this. with Holocaust survivors and then also with rats. And they did a study at the University of Utah where they did shock therapy with rats and cherry blossoms. So they showed the rat a cherry blossom and shocked it. And then as the posterity, the offspring, they did the same thing and the offspring had the same reaction. Yeah. Same things with a rat in the maze. They'll put it through a maze and shock them at a certain point, and then they'll take their offspring several generations down, put them in the maze, and the offspring will avoid that very same spot because energetically there's a connection there. So when
the trauma was so high.
So
do you think that happens in certain societal circles too?
Yes.
A culture, if you will.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So some cultures, they have like different superstitions and stuff like that. And you think that, parts of that are maybe passed down, but more so like it's imprinted on them at a young age that like
old wives' tales.
Yeah, like in China, like the number 4 is like a bad omen. So they'll skip it in a parking lot if they're superstitious. Like 1, 2, 3, 5.
Yeah.
Like they won't. There's not a parking spot,
and they probably
4.
don't even know why. It could be generations and generations down, and they don't. It's not even taught anymore, and they don't even know why. It's
and
like
what
I don't
drives that perceptions,
and like. We have similar cultures as well that we grew up in, and I've seen some of that, like, being Mormon, like we're afraid of certain things, or being Catholic, they're afraid of certain things. Like it's just little micro differences we could probably talk about forever. But my family, like we have a lot of generations in the church, and all my aunts and uncles, we all kind of share these same, like, oh, don't do this because of that. Like X plus Y equals this outcome.
And still beliefs.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting.
And something on the other end, it's not necessarily a belief, but this is how powerful the heart is when you talk about like generations of rats avoiding a place in the maze. Maybe this is totally off subject, but similar to me is that with Heart Math Institute, they a series of tests they'll do is they'll put people in front of a computer screen hooked up to brainwave analyzers and heart rate variability patterns, and they'll do 2 different sets of pictures. One is like death, war, and chaotic environments, and the other set is like weddings, birthday parties, happy memories. And the reason I'm saying this is because this is how we create memories, right? And so they'll start showing these pictures. Well, what happens is before either picture's either displayed, you start getting heart rate variability patterns before
it even. So the heart can anticipate it.
Yes.
Coherent when it's weddings and anniversaries and birthday parties and beautiful scenery. Incoherent, anger, frustration, worry when it's war and pestilence and food shortages and things like that.
Do you think there's there's certain programming or like memory like that? Like if you think about the world as a whole, like every culture shares like very similar story arcs, like in their religions or their mythos or their tales, like handed down. Like there are dozens and dozens of, like the Odyssey, right? The Gilead, in Greek culture, and then like the story of a Christ coming down and savior kind of figure, and then like all the way into modern day, we were talking about this at your house. Like then there's like A New Hope, Star Wars, like Luke Skywalker, like that kind of savior story.
Right.
I think that's some sort of like programming to us. Like if an alien race came down and didn't have that genetic programming or rearing through millennia, like they would see a different, maybe they would see a field
perceive it differently.
Yeah, they would see a field of dandelions and they were like, like that's where people in our culture die. Like,
it would be
it would mean
totally
something different, but we find peace and comfort in that, blue sky, mountains.
Right.
But maybe they like the lava, it's just weird to think about, like if an alien came and saw us, like what would they think weird about us? That we just look at these like screens all the time and they think, I don't know.
Yeah, what would their perception and belief be
it's
on
like,
that?
It's almost
it could
like
be different. I mean,
But that is like beliefs drive perception from the subconscious, and so that's what determines reality.
Exactly.
Right? Beliefs determine reality. And so when you look at, kids basing their programs, because that's how it happens, off of how people made them feel. I think all of us felt undeserving of a birthday gift or undeserving of a piece of candy or a toy at the store. Which is why every time we come down to St. George, Brooklyn now has the belief pattern that
5-year-old
she
has
gets a toy at the store, at the gas station.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say no
and
because
we have reinforced that.
I know how it works, obviously, and I'm like, it's not worth making her feel bad for a $5 or a $10 toy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we, everyone, the parents and all of us do the best we can in the moment based off our beliefs and what our parents before us instilled in us.
Yeah.
But then after 7, as you go along, the higher the emotional quotient, meaning
the intensity
of the emotion in the moment, what happens is the brain takes a snapshot because the brain works in pictures.
Yeah.
Imagination and visioning. And, with something horrible,
you'll recall that house that you got rejected
takes
at.
a snapshot
it's a picture
of that
and emotion.
And then it associates and enacts all the other 5 senses. So sight, touch, hear, smell, sound. And you'll remember
it's a snapshot
largely what happened. That's why a lot of people can recall high traumatic moments of like 9/11. 9/11. Yeah, somebody, where were you on 9/11?
They know.
I can remember. I was in Salt Lake Community College. Got there to school. I actually walked by, woke up, got dressed downstairs in my parents' home, walked by the TV, and I saw the 2 Twin Towers smoking. But I thought it was a movie. But I was late to class, so my perception in the moment, under stress, I was late. So I was very hyper-focused on my task, right? Which is getting to school. I get to school and walk in, and they're like...
And they're watching it on the TV.
Everyone go home. Go home. Like, no school today.
That was like identical to mine. I was just in 7th grade. I wasn't at a community college. I was leaving. My mom was looking at it on the TV, and I walked to school. And I'm like, oh, see you, Mom. And she's like, oh, my gosh. And I was like, all right, I got to go. And then I got to school, and the whole class was just watching it on one of those really old TVs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the same exact experience.
Yeah. But I remember I was wearing a red shirt. This is the only, my memory's failing me. There was a nice girl that was in my class, and we went to her house and watched like the rest of it unfold for hours.
I'll watch it.
I watched it for hours and then, went home. But what happens in the moment is those high traumas, or conversely, on the positive end, everyone remembers what they were wearing on their wedding, not just because we have pictures, but because the love was so intense in the moment. You remember the birth of children. You remember weddings,
so high emotion.
High emotion is what creates memories.
Mm-hmm. And you said something that kind of intrigued me here. It was your belief determines your reality, pretty much. And I have always subscribed, well, not always, but in my adult age, I've kind of come to the conclusion it's like the only reality that you will ever experience is one of your own perception. Mm-hmm. We could witness something and see it from 2 different perspectives, so it'll be slightly different. Like when police are getting statements about a car accident, right? Yeah. They see it, hear it differently.
2 different points of view. Yeah.
Yeah. We're limited to what we can touch, taste, smell, hear, feel, and remember those things. And so to tie it into that, they say your belief determines your reality. If you can change your belief in something, you can also alter your reality. And that's where you said, we were talking the other day, it was like the I am verbiage, the God, the creator verbiage. And like they say that the worst place to be born, or not worst place, but like the worst mindset to get stuck into or be born into is the middle class, because you're just comfortable. And so you have the comfort and you have your beliefs, but you don't possess the beliefs that like a wealthy person would have, or a poor person.
And it's not so bad you have to do something about it.
Right. That's why they're called limiting beliefs.
Limiting beliefs.
A lot of people call them limited beliefs, but limiting beliefs, same difference.
Totally.
But all that is in the subconscious programming is an emotion coupled with a thought, felt and thought over and over and over again until it creates, like we said, that neurological hardware in the brain. And so what happens is the subconscious is, not only do we operate from the subconscious more, about 99% of the day, we'll just split the difference and say 97% of the day.
Yeah.
That's a large amount of the day.
It's huge.
And that other 3%, we'll just split it and say 3% of conscious awareness. That subconscious, not only are we operating more from that, but it also is about different neuroscientists state differently, but it's anywhere from 1,000 to 1,000,000 times stronger than the conscious awareness of the brain.
On that note, I wanted to segue into this because that's like a perfect segue. But like when you start understanding this and how much we operate from the subconscious, how strong it is, and how like a lot of people don't, I mean, what do you say, 5% of the time, 3 to 5% of the time, we're actually conscious of like what we're doing. Especially if you're in a stressed environment, right? You're just going through the motions.
Yep.
It's really it's one thing to know about these things, but then when you start thinking about how easy it is to control the masses, and people go, oh, that's not possible. There's no way that these people could control this outcome and make everybody think this way. When you understand that principle and how that science works of how much we operate in the subconscious and how belief is just emotion experienced over and over and over again until you believe it to be true, right? And that can happen very, very quickly. Like look at the COVID situation.
Right.
Look at the amount of fear and the lack of like interaction and everything and exercise and just going out and getting sunlight and like that whole cocktail of a situation that was dealt en masse to the whole society. And when you understand that subconscious is that how powerful it is, it's very easy for us or as a society to be manipulated. And that's where you get sheep. That's where you get people who can't think, who are in denial of this.
Right.
Well, one thing that just came to me with that is we as human beings want to be able to control an outcome. Right. And with the work that we do, you know, it's like you want to be able to control an outcome based on all these things that you can't control, right? And so for us, it's like if you can control the way that you feel about stuff, then you have control of everything.
It's
because
like
if
self-mastery.
That is what we're working on. Because
self-mastery.
Then it doesn't matter what happens, you can maintain your peace.
Yes.
So the world
emotional
can be
resiliency.
It's emotional resilience. So because there is so little to control and people are spending so much of their energy trying to control outcomes and then they can't, and then that induces more stress. But as human beings, we fear the unknown. And the way to get on top of that is if you can maintain your peace no matter what, it doesn't matter what the unknown is. The unknown becomes exciting.
Yeah.
And so, but death is the biggest unknown to us, really, right?
Yeah.
And that's why people like religion for people answers that question. That's why they join a religion, or that's, you know, because it's like, what happens after death? And because it's such the unknown to us that we can be controlled in that state if we stay there and don't maintain our peace. And that's why if you fear death, you will do whatever is recommended or told to you to avoid that. And so that's how, you know, when you say that with being able to be manipulated, you know, fearing an outcome or the unknown is a very effective tool for human beings because we want to be able to know what to predict so we can prepare for it, right? Yeah, because that's survival. And most people live in survival 70 plus 80% of the time. So if you're in that state already, you're already there. It's very easy to, you know.
And what's survival? Stress.
Yeah.
Stress induces survival.
It's like
because the brain works in worst case scenario first and then backtracks from there. So under stress, and we can tie this into your training, but under stress, you think of worst possible case scenario. Like if that happened, I would die. Then backtrack from there. And it's like, but if this happens, then I'm safe. Then that's survival, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Then I won't die, then that's survival, but that's largely cutting off still all possibility and potential because you're operating from subconscious programs. And the
being
real
reactive
key
to whatever happens to you in your external
reactive.
world.
The real key to is that subconscious programs as they're playing. It's like, it's an operating system. So if your computer's doing something you don't want it to do and you're like, hey, don't do it.
Yeah.
Or
not
you
gonna,
read in
not
a
gonna
book.
do anything.
You read in a
to
book
it.
how to not do what you're doing. You
Yeah,
know,
it's not
Yeah.
going to do
How to-
anything. You can't. When you're running a subconscious program, you have very little probability of outthinking the program because
Yeah.
subconscious runs off of feeling. It only remembers emotions from the past, and when it brings up the emotion to the heart, then the heart transmits that signal. If it's negative, which we know that statistically 70% of the subconscious programs are negative, limiting, or self-sabotaging.
Yeah.
And then you add in the factor of about 80% of your thoughts are negative. And it's like you're not dealing with a big variance of the ability to stay elevated or stay in gratitude or love or compassion and stay in positive thought. So for me to say, hey, Blake, I know, you get PTSD, but when it happens, just think positively.
Yeah.
It's like, cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like
I'll try
like
that
you
next
said.
time.
Right. Like, cool. How the hell do I,
Yeah.
cool. How the hell do I do that?
That's like trying to tell, like you said, like a computer, right? It's on your desk.
Yeah.
You might be able to do like, if you program, you could speak into a microphone and tell the computer what to do, right? But if there's no microphone set up, you're just like, hey, computer, stop.
Yeah.
Turn off. Like,
Stop running this program.
Yeah,
Stop,
like trying to do a lamp.
It just
Then
laughs
stop.
at you.
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a clap on, and you're like,
Yeah. No, but if you know
Yeah.
how to hack into the system
Yeah.
and
If you know how to open
delete
the
that
command
file,
prompt.
exactly, and
you go into the
reprogram.
command prompt and you type some code. That's what you
And
guys are
that's
offering.
what,
Yes.
that's what the state of coherence does. It stops that program
Cycle.
from running, and you shift and reset, and you override the program with your conscious awareness and your intention.
Yep. And then you tie in stuff like from Jocko Willink, discipline, right?
Yeah.
That's what he's basically saying. Your discipline equals freedom if you can control your
Yes.
thoughts
Yes.
and your actions, right? And what you guys are offering, and what I find so unique about you guys, is that you guys are offering a way to do this on the daily and a way to tap into the science of frequency that will help you with this. So you don't have to, I mean, Jocko has great advice, right? So
Right.
does David Goggins, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you know,
we-
Yeah,
Kevin's
like
Yeah, we
in
Jocko,
shape.
like- we
Jocko
like all
says,
that.
good.
Good, yeah, I love that. I love
Hey.
this stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, this
Good.
didn't happen.
Yeah,
Good.
you burnt your toast.
Your
Good.
subordinates come to you and, hey, boss, we're not going to make the mission details or mission plan. Good.
Good. Like that.
Love that. Love that video. Shout out Jocko.
No, he's awesome. But a lot of people are turned off by like Goggins or Jocko because they're like intense guys,
Right.
right? And same thing with you. That's why Kevin's kind of captivating because you're huge. Stone Cold Steve Austin.
I know. The first time Blake saw him, he's like, "There's something interesting about a guy that looks like Stone Cold Steve Austin talking about heart energy." You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
something interesting about this.
Like-
I'm listening.
Are you guys familiar with Captain Planet, the cartoon?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know the little Indian guy who was like, it's like Earth, water, fire, and he's like heart. That's Kevin. But he's like huge. He's like heart.
That was a great
that is
cartoon.
awesome.
It was, man.
Yeah, I love that.
Captain Planet, he's our hero.
Yeah.
Take pollution down to zero.
Yeah. Yeah, we could start singing the song.
Yeah, man.
Well, and
Captain
share-
Planet. He's
Yeah.
our hero.
Okay, I don't know that one. But no, share with him because what we're offering is to be able to access that state of coherence and teach people how to do it, and then do it together collectively because it's magnified. The effect is magnified when we do it with combined intention. Yes.
Well, it's like everything in life. If you could go off by yourself and make millions,
Yeah.
and like that's cool. But if you can make millions with your family
Yep.
and like and influence and change their lives and stuff, that's where people find meaning.
Yeah.
And so, like you were telling me, yeah, you guys were just go ahead and talk about that. I guess then, like it was like what's the amount of people it takes
Oh, yeah.
To change
change something? Like,
Yeah.
the consciousness.
And
of
let
the
me
planet.
explain this really quick. Just ending the subconscious. We'll get into that. Ending with the subconscious is you can't out-talk it. You can't out-think it. There's not a lot you can do in the moment unless you know how. And that's shifting to heart coherent state. But what happens is there's a lot of people, neural baselines really quick. So your neural baseline is your most repeated emotions, thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors. And I'm counting to 4 if you can see my finger. but your often repeated emotions or your most repeated emotions, thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors. And that creates your neural baseline. And
Right.
when we've been conditioned to stress, our neural baseline is that of stress. And so when we go to feel peace, sometimes it's like, ooh, I don't like that. But in that state of stress, a lot of people have a difficult time feeling love or gratitude or compassion in an elevated state because they've been so numbed out through the conditions of stress.
Yeah.
It's
Hello,
hard
depression.
to feel that, right?
Comes right
There's
in.
depression. And it's like, it's also very difficult for me to say, hey, just don't be depressed, man.
Yeah,
there's
cheer up.
There's so many beautiful things to think
thankful
about
for.
and be thankful for. And it's like, cool, I can't see them. But it's that numb state. So what happens is the more emotions on the depleting side or the negative side that we feel, and we feel them all day long, right? 70% of our subconscious programs are negative, meaning it's recalling a negative emotion from an experience. When we're feeling those often enough, creates that neural baseline, and it's like a neural baseline is like a thermostat.
Yeah.
If perfect or optimal, we'll call it optimal regulation on a thermostat is 72 degrees. That's like if my neural baseline's that at 66 degrees and it's hot outside, then the system's going to be working overtime, expending a lot of energy to keep that status.
Yeah.
Burnout, right? Overwhelm. So what happens is when we are in that state, which a lot of us are most of the time, the heart doesn't like to feel that negativity all the time.
Yeah.
And the heart kind of blocks itself. It's called an energetic heart wall. But
I've
it
heard
makes
that
us,
term.
so it makes
That's
us
a body code term.
Yeah, that's a body code term,
Yep.
but it makes us a little numb,
It does.
right? Doesn't allow us to feel the negativity as much, the sorrow, the pain, the hurt, but it
When
also
you- when
doesn't
you ex-
allow us to feel the elevated emotions
Yes.
as
So
well.
when you experience emotional trauma or injury, you've got to keep surviving, right? We've talked about survival a lot. And so you've got to shut that down or block that ability to feel from the heart to keep going. You know, you got to provide for your family. You've got to provide for your kids or whatever. And so it's like,
You gotta
that's not
bury it.
Yes. You got to find a way to stop that pain and keep moving.
Willpower.
And so a lot of people, that is,
I think a lot of people bury that stuff, but then they never learn how to deal with it.
have you ever heard of the book, The Body Keeps the Score?
Nuh-uh.
So that stuff doesn't go away, you know?
Yeah.
It's going to come
It's a
out
coping way,
some
right?
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to come out somewhere, right? And this is why people have symptoms in their bodies, because it's your check engine light coming on
ailments,
saying something. There's a problem here. So
Check engine,
it's
I like
just
that.
yeah, it's just a signal that is letting you know something's out of order, something's out of balance. So yeah, when you think about how often we live in that state, we aren't open then to what all this kind of goes together, what we've talked about today, but your heart's not open and expanded, receiving that inspiration, that intuition. So then you're not sensing these things going on. So then you're always reactive because you're always just seeing what's right in front of your face, and you're not expanded and open, because that's not safe. You cannot be, expanded and heal in unsafe conditions.
I mean,
right?
if you're out in the open field, you're more likely to get attacked by a cougar than you are in a cave, like that you control, right?
Yes.
That's why the cavemen stayed in the caves, right?
Yep.
That's why it's better in a foxhole than walking on a road, right?
And energetically, that's what we do. We shrink our field down to protect, and that's why people get sore muscles, sore necks, their fascia. You get knots in your fascia, and we start to get that physical pain, because literally our body creates body armor for protection, because you're waiting for the next blow to happen in life, because it's inevitable, because bad things continue to happen and you can't break that cycle.
Numbness, pessimistic.
Yes.
Don't care. Yeah, whatever. You're just going to leave me anyway, right? And they
and then they repeat.
They smash the remote or something.
Yep,
right?
that self-sabotaging behavior. But if you feel unsafe, you're not going to open up and be like, I'm open for the next thing to hit me out of
People don't
nowhere.
like being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Especially like men too today, they're never taught that.
Right.
Right. You never be vulnerable. You never show weakness.
There's no crying in baseball.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then in the military, scale that up.
Right.
Right.
Dial it up to 10 or like Spinal Tap, the show. He's turning the amps. It's this British mockumentary. He's like, these all go to 11.
Yeah.
Like, they don't go to 10. These go to 11.
Yeah.
Because that's
And
why we
people
go
are
them.
living.
They go to 11.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you just scale that all the way up, maximum. And that's why, like, I'm going to be sending vets to you. And then also, we probably should shout out our other client, too, Emmanuel, who does the body code. And he kind of has a different, outlook on it. Same practice, but, like, I'm going to send vets to him, too. Like, to you guys, it's all, like, under one roof here, right?
Yeah.
It's your message really, because it's backed by science, my salesman brain can go, I can sell that.
Yep. Right.
I can sell that idea.
Right.
I can back that up better. So that's why I think it appealed to me. Like, my logic and my brain was like latched onto you guys. But yeah, there's just a lot of vets out there that are dealing with PTSD, and it's not exclusive to veterans because it's the same chemical right in the brain, whether it's a trauma from a car accident or a trauma from an explosion. It's the same chemical. There's only just different intensities of it.
Right.
And that was never really clear to me until 5 minutes before this podcast, when you mentioned that. The intensity level is what is different.
Is the differentiating factor.
And so veterans who have experienced PTSD or have it, they might not even know because it's a subconscious programming.
Right.
So they're like, no, I was in denial for years about some stuff because I was in the Marine Corps, but I did some contracting type work afterwards. And and so some of the guys that know me, they'll understand that. But it's interesting because I was in denial for years and was wondering why I was getting sick all the time, why my relationships were failing, why I could never get ahead in life, why I could never get ahead in business, and why the way I handled it, luckily, wasn't at times I was at the bottom of a bottle or two. But never into like hard drugs or anything. A lot of people will turn to those things to escape or to get relief, or other things, other vices. But for me, it was being a nerd and diving into escapism. And so I was just always reading or watching or playing a game or anything to just escape. Always. Like, I would rather just be reading about some fantasy story or whatever to get away from it. And that's why I'm a nerd. So that's why we get along. I enjoy pop culture, probably a little too much, but
you guys have this interesting dynamic because you're both nerds, but you're both like into like guns and military and muscles and gym. And
there are some guys that have dozens of hobbies, and there's some guys that have like one or two.
Yeah.
And I think we're in the dozens category where we're just interested in a lot of things.
A lot of interests.
Yeah.
Cars and engines and weights and science.
But go ahead.
Oh, you were talking.
I was going to say that's the point with us and what we do is there's so much depression and anxiety. It's so rampant.
Yeah.
And I think, not that I think, it's an easier process than I think most people think.
Yeah.
And you brought up raise your vibration. That's the effort, is because there's two systems. There's the neurological network in the brain and the neurological network in the heart.
Yeah.
And to really get to the point of healing, a lot of modalities and a lot of things address, thought work and thoughts, and really focus on the neurological network in the brain, which is, essential.
Yeah.
But to get to a state of healing, to get past these depressive emotions, these anxious emotions, we have to address the neurological networks in the heart. And what happens is the cells in your body contain this magnetic frequency of an emotion. And you have to get rid of that in order to get the subconscious and the conscious working together. Yeah. What we want is the subconscious primarily programmed with uplifting programs, with positive programs of belief that I can rather than I can't.
And I think another factor we haven't talked about too is the consistency in which you do these practices.
Right.
Because a lot of people are handed a pill and you take this pill for 5 days, like what's it called?
Like a steroid?
I just lost my train of thought.
Like an antibiotic?
Antibiotic. Thank
Yeah.
you, Mallory. That's why. What was that? Who was that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
But like,
voice.
The
yeah.
voice from
So
above.
you're like, oh, okay. Like all I got to do is take a pill, and then I'm good in 8 days or 3 days or whenever the prescription's done.
Right.
And you usually see results right away because modern medicine is pretty powerful.
Right.
And so I think what a lot of people miss is the context and like how much consistency it takes to really make like permanent changes. But then you can also slip back, right? You said you've known people, close friends, other family that have made progress, and then they're back to like the bottle or something
Right.
because they reactivated sympathetic nervous system stuff. They lost that piece somehow. And it's something that you have to consistently maintain. I think it takes more work being conscious always takes more work than being subconscious.
Right.
Yeah. And that's, I think, an important thing to note for if someone comes to you guys, like if I was to send one of my veteran buddies there when I have them see this podcast, like first off, how would they find you guys on this Raise Your Vibration? I think you guys have a website coming or something, right? But how else can they find you? And then how consistent, like what does it take, like timeline wise, like to see lasting results?
Yeah. So in speaking to that, yes, if we all have to realize that if we're 30, 40 years old, more or less, whatever, that we have been operating in the same fashion. If I'm 40 years old, then I've been operating the same mindset, the same thought patterns, the same emotional states. If you look at like physically going to the gym, if I haven't never gone to the gym, it's going to take a minute to instill the habits, right? If I've been eating poorly for 40 years, to think eating good for a few weeks is going to have results isn't going to be probably the best way to look at it, right? So what we say is we have statistically, like I said, in 6 to 9 weeks, we show a 56% decrease in depression, 46% decrease in anxiety. After that, could you go back and relive those? Sure. But it's a lifestyle change. But that's why, we do a lot of one-on-one work with a lot of clients, and we'll do like we'll do 6 or 12 week session packages, which is once a week. And we do see phenomenal and very good results.
Those are huge percentages, by the way.
Yeah, huge percentages. But we see very good results with that. Where we're wanting to send everyone now is to this Raise Your Vibration, because if 6 or 12 weeks is good, then 6 months or 12 months is even better.
Right.
And the whole idea is Raise Your Vibration will be a weekly call where it's consistent, where you show up every week for 6 to 12 months.
Not to mention a huge community.
Like a huge community.
Because that's what we are.
Yeah,
We're
because
tribal.
what happens is everyone's heard there's power in numbers.
Yeah.
What we show is that Arizona University just published a finding and statistic on the collective power of intention. When we have one person with intention is good. When we have thousands of people with the same collective intention, it's far more powerful.
Right.
It's the same thing with a heart's magnetic field. When you're doing your coherent practice on your own with your heart rate variability monitor, we suggest 10 minutes twice a day, not very much. Yeah. But when you're consistent with that, you see these results. Right. It's actually based off of 3 to 5 minutes. So if you do 10 minutes, you're doing even better. But when you're doing this by yourself, it's great. And we can measure your heart rate variability. You have the scores on your app on your phone, and you can see your level of progress. When we have more people in the same place on the same Zoom call with open, coherent heart rhythms and open, coherent brainwave patterns, what happens is one of the coolest parts about the heart-brain coherent state is the brain shifts to a highly ordered state of gamma. Gamma brainwave patterns, which is a super learning brainwave pattern. And we literally can install new neurological networks in every 10-minute session. So the more you do that, the more you increase and enhance your belief patterns, the more it starts overriding your subconscious, and your subconscious starts to because the subconscious is a repetition brain. Yeah. So the more you repeat things, the more it's ingrained, the stronger the neurological networks are.
Yeah.
And so the whole idea of collective intention and collective coherence is the larger amounts of people we have on the call, open hearts, open brainwave patterns, installing new beliefs. It's called in energy, in physics, it's called constructive interference.
Yeah.
Where the more energetic waves you have combining together, it's like waves in the ocean. It starts out, way out in the ocean, small hydrogen molecules start moving. The more buddies they get, the more hydrogen molecules they get
more
together,
energy.
start creating more energy, more waves, and the
Bigger.
waves get bigger as they get to the shore.
Right.
Same idea. So when we're on a call and we have 1,000 people, the collective power of those heart fields is so powerful that it's better than an individual session.
Yeah. You just described everything about teamwork.
Right.
You ever seen in the 90s when the Bulls played the Jazz for the chip?
Oh,
like
yeah.
you want to
we
see
saw
a
that.
team in coherence, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a well-polished team, a tight military unit, right? A congregation who all have the same intent, praying for the same thing, or like, from us. I'm not practicing Mormon anymore, but like, when they all lay their hands on somebody and give someone a blessing, with their priesthood, right? It's a collective intention,
Right.
that's being pushed,
transfer of
and it's
energy.
also the belief of the individual. There's a lot of belief and a lot of intention going into that.
Yep.
Same thing if you go to like a rave. I just compared a priesthood blessing to a rave.
Hey,
But you go to
we
a
can go
rave
wherever you want.
and everybody's on like some feel good drugs, but everyone's intentions, they're probably different, but like everyone's intention usually aligns in the sense like we're here to have a good time.
Right.
And they have this saying at a rave. Well, the one we went to, it was like love, peace, and hair grease or something. I don't know what they were saying, but everybody was just like super welcoming. And then like I've experienced that at other concerts, like especially where there's certain types of music playing. And even what's weird at like metal concerts, I like every genre of music because, and I don't know why, I didn't know why until I started looking into frequency. And there's a time and a place for every frequency, I think. Like I want it to enhance whatever emotion I'm feeling. But that's where it gets dangerous when you're in a dark place and that's all you listen to is dark music.
Yeah.
Right. That's not really raising your vibration, right? So it's
You're
interesting.
going to need
dude.
to go classical at that moment.
Yeah. I always tell people when I work, the first thing I ever said to my boss, Jefferson Rogers, that you guys have known, I'm like, they're like, introduce yourself. I'm like, I'm Blake. I like smooth jazz and I like whiskey. And that was all I said. And so I love smooth
That's
jazz.
great.
Like
That's great.
you can ask
make you
Mel.
feel
Very
good.
soothing.
good. It's
That's why they
soothing.
call it smooth.
Yeah, smooth, man. Like I've actually had it in my earbuds, like when I'm at the shooting range on occasion.
Because it calmed you down.
Yeah.
That's
Or there's like some calm undertones, and then all of a sudden the saxophone will just be like pure chaos.
Yeah.
I love sax.
You love
Or
a little
some
chaos
flute
in there.
solo,
Yeah.
like Ron Burgundy with a flute solo, right? Yeah, it's just chaos. So it reminds me of like controlled chaos, like in a combat sense. That's why I like it when I shoot guns.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
that
kind of
makes
weird,
sense.
but
Right. Well, imagine that. I'm glad you brought that up. Imagine a stadium where there's 100 people
yeah.
clapping randomly out of rhythm.
Oh, out of rhythm.
You'd have to clap too.
Yeah,
But,
just everyone.
and
I got you.
Yeah,
what
yeah,
happens is that's incoherence, right?
Yeah.
Energetically, there's no unison.
Right.
There's no coordination. So coherence means, in physics, it means the combination of, or not the combination, but many systems in synchronized order.
Yeah, in synchrony. Yeah.
Right? That's what coherence means.
Sure.
So in brain waves and heart rhythms, what it means is that they're aligning in order. So instead of 100 people in a large stadium clapping randomly or incoherently, it's like 100,000 people clapping in unison.
It's like doing the "We Will Rock You."
Yeah. Or the wave.
Yeah.
The wave.
it's powerful.
Yeah.
The wave
Yeah.
going through the stadium,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's what coherence is like. And the more people that are at a concert, you feel the energy when they scream, when they clap, when they are cheering, right? That's the difference between like one person on an individual session or many
yeah.
on the same call. And so what our efforts are is to give give everyone a place that desire to come join this, raise your vibration. Our website is myhealingworks.com, and there will be a link to raise your vibration, but it'll be a weekly call, about a 45-minute call where we'll identify the main emotions on the entire group, because we all carry the same emotions.
Yeah, so this is where we're combining, the work of the emotion code, body code, of identifying the emotions and imbalances and where they're stored in the body, and then upgrading that neurological connection or the program, the subconscious program, with coherence and a new belief that is of a higher vibration.
Yeah.
So with those numbers, those statistics from HeartMath, that's not even combining what we do when we delete those old emotional energies, bring them to the surface to conscious awareness, because people with PTSD, they just know they feel bad. They have this, and they might be able to recall certain experiences that were emotional. But, a lot of times when things are identified through muscle testing of like, oh, here's that old, this emotion, and it was, it's stored here in your liver or in your kidneys. Kidneys are a huge one for fear. It's like the vibrational frequency of fear is the same in you and as it is in me, because it's the same vibrational frequency. We have maybe a different experience or a different story or a different way to relate to that, but it's the same vibrational frequency. And when you clear that from a group, that low vibrating energy, and replace it with a higher vibrating emotional energy from the heart, now you're really starting to change the physiology in your body and in the collective energy of the planet.
Yeah.
So there's groups of people that have, like Gandhi, back in India, organized groups of people, and they created peace. What we know is that this is what Greg Braden found. If you look up Greg Braden, he professes HeartMath as well. But what he found, geologists found, that if you take the amount of people on the planet, 1% of that and the square root of 1% would equal about 8,000 people. If we had 8,000 people in one place, or throughout the world on one call, feeling gratitude and feeling love for all humanity,
right,
we get a conscious shift in the energy of the planet. And we actually, and that's measured too. This is all science. So HeartMath not only has magnetometers that measure heart rate and heart magnetic fields, but they have on an individual and on groups of people, but they have large magnetometers set up throughout the whole world, and they can measure the magnetic field of the planet. I mean, they coordinate with NASA. We have pictures of the magnetic field of the planet, but the magnetic field of the planet, this is the cool part. Well, it's all cool, but this is really cool. Yeah. The magnetic field of the Earth that keeps everything living, sustains life, resonates at 0.1 hertz. The reason I say that is when your heart is opened up to love, especially gratitude, compassion, appreciation, or care, all of the heart uplifting emotions, the resonant the frequency that the heart is producing in that magnetic field, 0.1 hertz in that range. So when you are in tune with your heart, you are also in tune with nature. Largely suggests when you go out, if you camp, keep nailing the table. Sorry, Mel. But when you camp, you go out in nature, go on hikes.
Right.
It's very difficult to be angry in nature.
It is. And that's why you see in the Bible and other holy scriptures of other cultures, I can't remember what the Buddhist one is, or the Indian one. Hindi, sorry. Anyway, they're always up in like a mountain, like a sacred place. They're like somewhere in nature that's like remote, out of the way. And like that's why Jesus went out into the desert, into the wilderness, like to be alone, to commune with God on his own, and to fast. Like it makes sense. Like,
so because in that state there is harmony and there's balance.
Yeah.
And in the state of harmony and balance, there is no dis-ease. There's no dis-ease. There's no disease. So if we can control the harmony and the balance in the body with the energy and power of the heart, that's where healing happens.
So when you shift to that coherent state, a couple things happen. You get the major body systems in that coherent alignment. So the two halves of the autonomic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic, now are communicating together high energy, start producing a lot of energy. You get the hormonal system when you shift from frustration to heart coherence or peace or kindness, compassion, gratitude. You also get a 1400 biochemical and neurochemical shift, mainly producing DHEA, human growth hormone, serotonin, dopamine from the brain, your reward centers, your feel-good hormones. And one of the most important ones, oxytocin from the heart, the love or the bonding hormone, one of the most powerful hormones in the body. And you shift to a state of growth and healing. Then you also get the complete alignment between heart, mind, and emotional states.
Yeah.
So you're in that state of flow. You're in that state of balance.
Creativity, right?
Creativity. So you activate not only extreme heart intelligence, which is intuition, discernment from the heart, but then all your higher cognitive functions of the brain, all your extreme conscious states. So you get that highly ordered state of gamma, which is going to be extreme problem-solving solutions, extreme creativity, extreme envisioning imagination, right? As adults, we're told not to imagine, right? Because that's what kids do. But look at how kids create. Imagination is where all possibility exists.
Mm-hmm. The limiting beliefs are gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So you start overriding those states. So the whole point for us is consistently join this call, and it'll be extremely affordable to where we're, $150 for a session with the two of us,
session.
for $147 for a 30-minute session. This will be more in the neighborhood of less than that for a whole month, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think we're targeting like $87 for an individual or $147 for a couple or a family. We want groups of people showing up, and we'll identify the emotions, we'll clear them on everybody, and then we'll get into a heart coherent state. But then we'll also have exercises that we do, things that you write down so you can start, progressing, and you can look back and be like, oh, hey, this is where I start shifting.
Yeah.
But in our professional opinion, what we've created with Raise Your Vibration, I think it will be one of the most effective places to show up once a week.
Yeah.
To really start affecting change.
And what's funny too is I always like to play the devil's advocate in my brain.
Right.
Or like what's an objection somebody would say to this? And people that understand mental disciplines and they understand these sciences, or they're willing to understand these sciences, like they'll come to you with an open mind. But a lot of people are like, I would never pay for that. That's dumb, right? And it's like, well, you pay for a gym membership, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, no one questions that. Like, oh, I got to get back in shape. Well, you got to eat right, and you got to go to the gym. So that means you got to pay monthly for the gym subscription, right? Mm-hmm. Or you got to go buy a home gym and do it yourself, like I did. But like,
you're investing. You're investing in your health.
Yeah, nobody thinks that's weird,
right?
And then the moment somebody's like, "Why don't you pay for some therapy, counseling, or like coming into a group like this to understand how your subconscious works?" And they're like, "No." Like people object to that. It's like, how like. For me, it's like I'm going to go to the mental gym every day. That's why you read books. Right. That's why you learn. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like a lot of people are waking up to this idea that like health isn't just looking at your biceps in the mirror, Kevin.
I'm sorry, Kevin.
Sorry
to burst your
that's
bubble.
part of it. And what a prime example we have here. But it's cool to see that you're dialed in on both of those. Both of you guys, very healthy. And then you got this stuff going for you too. And it's really it's attractive. I can feel you guys resonate it. You live it. And so that's why I'm excited. And I'm really just happy you guys let me on today and interrogate you like I did. So
I think it was.
And one last thing is shout out to Dr. Joe Dispenza. He largely does we do very similar to what he does. But he says it's not a time in history anymore to know. It's a time to know how. And that's the point, is that Lewis Howes, if you follow him, he has a big, the School of Greatness podcast. He just said today, why aren't people hiring emotion coaches? You hire coaches for all facets of life, but your emotional resilience will flood into your mental resilience.
I was just telling you that yesterday. Your spiritual
resilience, your physical resilience, your relational resilience, your abundance. It all flows from your emotional states. And that's what, we didn't start the podcast just to lure people to raise your vibration, but we want that to be a place where people can come at a very low buy-in and jump on there every week and really experience the healing, really experience expansion, really experience what it feels like to feel good.
I just don't think people understand how good they could feel and how good we're designed to feel.
They're ignorant to it.
Mm-hmm. What were you going to say? Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that quote, what's that, Kevin Trudeau? We don't understand how good we're supposed to feel.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I stole your thunder on that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was going to say that. We're on the same wavelength. But really, like, we're supposed to be happy. We're supposed to be grateful. We're supposed to be joyous. And we talked about that yesterday, the process of enjoyment. Yeah. Enjoying life. Like, life isn't designed to be mundane. We're supposed to be creators. We're supposed to be extraordinary, not ordinary.
And I agree 100% with that. But there's a side of the coin that some people say, and some people don't want to admit or know, that in order to feel that level of happiness, there has to be a yin to the yang, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So there's positive and negative. And this doesn't mean you go pursue negative experiences, right? But like, it's going to happen because the life, that's how it is. And so that's what, the deeper you go into a negative experience and you come out the other side, you'll be able to reach higher heights.
It's called the law of polarity.
The law of polarity. Yep.
Polarity,
That's what I was getting at. And so like, the polarity thing is like, it's so important. And like, that's why we understand how shitty, excuse my language, we could feel.
Right.
But we, like what he said, we don't understand how good we can feel yet. I feel like that's where we're lacking the know-how.
Market, huh?
Yeah. And so it's like people that go to the gym that are in great physical condition. I know a lot of people that are in great physical condition and that are in a very stressed state, flight or fight. Like that's with my military experience. I was really disciplined because I was in that environment.
Right.
And it was like, I don't want to die. It was a fear. I don't want to die.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the weak link in the team. So of course I'm going to do, 50 pull-ups and like run 5 miles, all that stuff. And look at me now. I'm not, I'm away from that because I associate like the stress.
Because it's time to work on your emotional resilience. And then we're going to get back to that. And then we're going to get back. You're going to, you're going to do it from an entirely different state and a state of creation rather than a state of fear.
For the first time, I actually have an understanding of how to get to that point. Mm-hmm. And it's taken me years to figure it out. And then meeting you guys is kind of a little cherry on top. But I feel like I'm only like halfway there. So it's like a little cherry halfway there.
Filled. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a little stop.
It's a little whipped cream in the middle.
Yeah. I have a clear understanding of it. Yeah. And that's why I get excited for veterans and for anybody with that kind of stuff or background. I think you guys could do some great stuff. But yeah, Mal, how are we doing on time today? I feel like I'm running your podcast.
We're at 2 hours.
2 hours right now.
We're split evenly right now.
We're split evenly.
But thanks. It's just one of those things that we're never going to be immune to feeling some anxious feelings or some depressive thoughts, here once in a while. Yeah. But the point is that can you be emotionally resilient and shift to gratitude?
Can you have a say in the matter?
Can you spill ketchup on your white shirt and be like, it's okay, I'll get another shirt?
Yeah.
Can you get in a car accident and be like, you know what, I hope everyone's okay. Luckily it's just metal. And luckily I have insurance, and luckily, it's just
luckily it was only the arm that broke.
Well, and find the higher purpose, understand that there's a higher purpose to everything, and can you stay on that flip side of the coin while not being ignorant to the fact that the other side exists.
Sure.
But by choice, where do you want to reside? Because you know the benefits and payoff of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, someone, it's explained in a way that I understand very well. I don't know who explained this, but if you had $86,400 in your bank account because there's 86,400 seconds in a day, and someone stole $20 from you, are you going to spend the rest of the day focusing on the $20 that someone took? Or are you going to be grateful that you still have, $86,380 in your bank account?
Yeah.
And that's the point, is shifting perception. We talked about it in the command center before we came in here. It is like success or failure, right? A lot of people go through things and think that it's failure rather than success in knowledge and experience and growth, because I think everything in life is designed to teach us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, and based on the way you feel, you really could experience heaven on earth.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Just such beauty, such love, such connection, such joy. And that's where we're headed, is teaching people how to experience that more often than the stress and all of that. So
but that's
I think
our
that's
goal.
the mastery. That's
That's our goal, is
here.
to teach people these techniques. There's several techniques
That's
and
awesome.
exercises you'll learn on Raise Your Vibration will clear the emotions. And so it's something that on a weekly basis you can show up and start improving and feeling better and better and better.
Right.
And the more people, the better.
We'll get in coherence together. You'll learn what it feels like to be in that state, so that you'll notice when you aren't, and then you'll know how to shift back to it once you catch it.
And we'll teach you those applications.
Make
You're
it
training
conscious.
yourself.
Yep.
You're
Conscious
retraining.
decision.
And then eventually, we don't want to fight with the subconscious. We just want it to work for us instead of against us, right? So when we start to program it, and the default mode is that joy, and it is that understanding, you don't have to sit and reconcile every emotion you feel, because you automatically know there's joy to be had in this, even if it's a difficult moment.
Because you don't get what you think about. You don't get what the brain thinks. You get what the heart feels.
I see what you say. Have you?
So we teach the heart to feel better. You'll start getting everything that you feel.
Yeah.
Everything that will suggest that you should have gratitude.
Yeah.
That you should have love, that you should care. Like, those things will show up in your life. I mean, that's law of attraction, but we can break it down in science.
Yeah.
It's a magnetic field of the heart. Magnets attract. So whatever the heart's feeling most of the day is what you will get in your life.
Yeah. That's awesome. Like you said something like you could have heaven on earth. And I am a firm believer that hell is a state of being. It's not a place where you could end up. It's something that's like could happen to you right now, or is happening to some people right now.
A lot of people are.
Well, I think hell is PTSD, right?
Yeah, it's
suffering.
Yeah. It's your then in that case it's your neural baseline.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's either, or Napoleon Hill would say, if you've ever read his books, Think and Grow Rich. My favorite is Outwitting the Devil.
Yep.
And he just kind of talks about, are you serving the positive energies of this universe, or are you serving the negative?
Yep.
And it was pretty controversial for the time. His family didn't release that book till like the 80s or 90s.
Yeah.
And his wife like begged him never to do it, because it would have like
Opened the gates of hell
they
and
probably would have
opposition
like burned
to
his house down or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
But it was because it
absolutely.
was suggesting that like organized religion was actually serving a negative, or inducing fear in people and controlling over fear, even though it was preaching this message of saviors and stuff like that. And he doesn't really specify. I think he does a couple times, but he just says all of organized religion. Also, organized schooling and education was for a greater cause, like forcing this negative like conformity onto
Agenda.
people. Yeah.
Right.
And so like that's what he says. He's like, religious leaders and teachers were like the biggest culprits of serving the adversarial or the negative energy. Fascinating concept. You're like, oh my gosh.
Right.
Well, what we talk about in the groups that we talk to and in individual sessions is, are you a hostage to fear or a host to love? Are you a hostage to ego or a host to spirit?
I like
Are
that.
you
Hostage to your
hostage to your mind or host to your heart? Because you're in one state or the other, right? It's just like the sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous systems. You're either in fear or you're in love, in that state. Not like, oh my gosh, I'm in love, but in the vibrational frequency of a derivative of love or fear or
Positive,
heart.
negative. Yeah.
And if everything is, energy, frequency, and vibration, the higher you vibrate, that's why it's called raise your vibration, because your emotional patterns of your magnetic field of your heart, the higher you're vibrating, the better you attract.
Yeah.
Laws of nature, laws of physics,
Laws of
the
attraction.
universe, laws of attraction.
That's awesome, man. I mean, we could talk all day.
Yeah.
We could.
But
And we should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be like a
this has
10-hour
been-
podcast.
We actually could just
we have
cut
food
and stop.
brought in, and
Just
we're
do
just
months
We could
of
just
episodes.
stop doing our podcast from here, and that's pretty much what we do in a nutshell. And we covered it all.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, that's what we started this podcast for, was to talk about this stuff, because it's like we said before, it's hard to clip it and portray this message with emotion or feeling and have people grasp that concept, and be like, oh my gosh, that got my attention. And so we wanted to create a place where people could hear us talk about this stuff and go, that makes sense, that resonates, I want to know more about this.
Yeah.
Because we've seen it work. It's not theory, we've seen
I'm
it
excited
work over
to-
and over again.
I'm excited to be a part of what you guys are doing. Me and Mal are probably going to join, sign up, and do that. I'm just happy you had me on. I mean, it's kind of like
this
spur of the
worked
moment.
out.
It
This
worked
worked out
perfectly
perfectly.
because
It always does,
it's easier. I always tell her, like, there's so much information rattling around the attic that I have, and I can talk about it all day long, and I love talking about it. It is easier when somebody asks me a specific question rather than just going all roundabout
And trying to,
The request for the information.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
And then we can explain it.
Because you're like
hopefully
looking
in a
at
way
this
that-
like archive.
Yeah.
You're like, where do I
Where do
begin?
we start?
because it's
Until someone answers the
relatability,
question.
right? That's what really resonates with people when it's relatable, and on these calls the emotions will be related to experiences and circumstances where it's like, oh, that's why that happens. And then, we'll have the exercises that, we'll want everyone to come with a notebook, a pen and paper so they can write things down, because we remember things 42% better when we write them down.
Yeah.
Energetic transference onto paper. But, really understanding why is really what starts, getting people healing and learning and everything like that. And then from there, we'll continue on the podcast with just real life applications.
Yeah.
Like, how do you change your standards, or why don't most people reach their goals? 92% of people don't reach their goals. Why? We'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because of lack of belief, right? And so how do we upgrade that? So that's the point of the podcast, really. Like I said, isn't really is to drive people to, raise your vibration, but we'd love everyone to come, because you'll learn, you'll grow, you'll feel better, but is to really just get this information out there.
Yeah.
Well, there's some avenues and a lot of places that teach it. We just, we have a unique spin on it, I think.
Yeah. Podcasts are like the new books,
Right.
books 2.0 podcast.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
I'll listen to things. I struggle to read long
He'll
posts.
like a long
Yeah.
Facebook post. I'm like, did you read? I'll see on my feed that he liked it. I said, did you read that?
I'm like, no, I got
I'm
the
like,
gist
nope.
of it, but I liked the person. So
You lost him.
Yeah. When you have,
He'll listen, but he won't read it.
yeah, especially with like a car ride down here, you
Yeah.
got so much time.
Yeah.
Just listening,
Perfect.
multitasking is what's needed in ours. Is like it's
Yeah.
necessity of
Right.
our lifestyles.
right.
So podcasts are awesome.
Yep.
So we're just thrilled to have
we're
you.
thankful for you guys and that it came together the way it did, and all the different connections we have with different people that we want to collaborate with, and then your connection to the military, which has always been a huge interest for us, and all of it. So
Cool.
Things always come together.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on.
Okay,
guys.
well, thank you.
Yep. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you. We'll see you on the next podcast, but
Yeah.
we won't see you. So I always say that, but or not always, but a couple times now. But thanks for listening.